Alright guys, time for another franchise review, or trilogy review if you will. So I'm going to talk about How to Train Your Dragon. And this movie was special to me because I remember seeing this one in theaters. I remember watching it pretty much over and over again. This has just been one of my favorite franchises within DreamWorks. And the ironic thing is, I saw the first one when it had originally come out, but I had not seen the second or third until few weeks ago. And so just the first movie alone established itself as one of my favorite franchises within DreamWorks. So that was really cool to be that impressive with just one movie. DreamWorks has put out obviously some really great movies and franchises. I remember watching Madagascar. Kung Fu Panda's always been one of my favorites. Shrek obviously is a classic. And so they have some really good ones. And for today, I want to sort of break down a little bit each of the How to Train Your Dragon movies. I kind of want to not go into too much detail in the first one, only because I do want to rewatch it again and sort of do a much deeper dive onto the first one individually, closer to the live actions release. So I'll talk about sort of the main points I really liked about the first one, and I actually do have the steelbook for it. This is a 4K steelbook as well. I know the glare is sort of weird on my phone, but I really like this cover. I just love it. It just sort of gives you the vibes of what the movie's about, front and back, which I almost think the back is better. So you guys let me know if you like the back better or the front. So I really like this a lot. I think it has, yeah, I'll remove the discs to show you guys the picture underneath, because not every movie or steelbook will do this, but this one does have it. So I just thought this was really cool. Obviously they put a lot of thought and effort into this copy of this movie. And so for this movie, I think it sort of has multiple different themes that I think a lot of different people can relate to. I think it hit a lot of different multiple points to get across to so many different people. So first of all, I think the first thing you realize is peer pressure. So it's sort of a generic theme to throw out there, but for this movie, all the Vikings kill dragons. That's just what they do, because everyone does it, because they just do. And they don't really have some thought-provoking reason or explanation. It's just what they do. So in Hiccup, our main character for this movie, he shoots down a dragon, which ultimately we know is toothless, and he can't kill him. And it's very un-Viking of him. But he's just staying true to himself. He's not killing Toothless. He's not peer pressured into it. There is no way he was going to kill him. He just can't. And so we see the individuality from him, where he sets himself apart from everyone else. He sort of sees himself as an outsider. He sees himself as a failure. But as the movie progresses, obviously, he does ultimately get recognized in the end. But as we move on from this part, which I would consider sort of the beginning, his father does have some faith in him eventually, and puts him in dragon training. And so it is nice to see that. But for Hiccup, it's almost a little too late, because now he doesn't want to fight them. He just kind of wants to hang out with Toothless, basically. They're still forming their bond. They're still getting to know each other. But he knows he doesn't want to fight dragons. He doesn't want to kill them. And so this sort of gives a different dynamic, because his, I guess, classmates, for lack of a better term, because I can't come up with another term, in dragon training, they're all jealous of him, because he's just sort of impressing everyone by doing something simple and different and original. And they don't like that, because they're all Vikings and they're supposed to kill the dragons, and Hiccup is not. And so I just thought that was really interesting to sort of give him an individual story that just so sets him apart from the rest of the characters in this movie. And ultimately, Astrid does find Toothless, and as she and Hiccup are able to form a bond, when Toothless is found out from the village and they use him to go find the lair, Astrid sort of gives Hiccup the push he needs to sort of go after Toothless. And so we come to this, with the animated movie, had this nice dynamic between the son and father relationship, him being an outsider, to now big epic battle in the end, with all these dragons, all these Vikings, and it's just something that you just I envision this in live action being just one of the coolest sequences in movies. I really, really do have a lot of faith in this movie, in the live action, just because of how much I love the first one and how much the director loves it. So I have a lot of faith. But moving on to this one, as we have this big epic battle, Hiccup finally proves to the village, hey, we don't need to kill them, let's train them. And that's how it ends. It's a nice, easy ending. It didn't really need a trilogy, but I'm so glad that it did, because I think the next two really earned their spot. And so let's sort of move on. Let's move on to the second one. I have the 4K copy as well. I don't believe there's a steelbook for the second, so I just have this copy. And for this movie, I feel like it didn't have too many themes as much as it was lore building. We get to see that not every tribe or village tames their dragons. When he eventually meets his mother, she has a very different approach to dragons. Then we have the Dragon Master, or villain for this movie. He has a different approach to dragons. So it's just sort of, I feel like, was the lore building. This was a perfect connector piece from the first to third movie. I think that they couldn't have gone into the third movie without this one. This one really did serve as a honorable sequel to the first one, but really did help bridge the gap from 1 to 3. So this one had a lot more fighting. There's a lot more action sequences. The animation looks slightly better because I think they're finding their groove with the franchise. And I just think that this one decided to sort of give some more personal stories. So when he finally discovers, when Hiccup discovers his mother is alive, obviously he's forming an instant bond, and she's been training dragons just like he has. So he now knows that he wasn't this outsider all along. He got it from his mother. And so that sort of gives him that personal connection. And when his father finds them, they're expecting him to just be super angry and vengeful, but he's just glad to see her. And so we get some really severe character development with him. He becomes this lovable guy all of a sudden, and it's just really cool to see because you just fall in love with these characters. And for Toothless, I think it was very interesting, him being sort of beaten, if you will, in the first half from his mother's dragons. And it sort of makes him seem not so invincible that he was in the first one, which I think gives some stakes to the second one as well. And ultimately, when the villain ends up finding Hiccup and his parents on this sort of small dragon island, is what I'm going to call it. And as they have this, now another epic battle, which this movie had plenty of battles, we now see that there are two alpha dragons on both sides, and the villain, his dragon, wins. And so all of the dragons are responding to the alpha, and ultimately even Toothless, which further proves how not invincible he is. And he's the one that ends up actually killing Stoic, which I thought was extremely dark for this movie. Hiccup, of course, is pushing Toothless away. Toothless did snap out of it, but only temporary because Hiccup pushed him away. If he had just embraced him and, realized that it wasn't his fault, Toothless probably wouldn't have gone back to the alpha so quickly like he ultimately did. And so this raises stakes even more, because now you're like, oh god, Toothless isn't even on our side anymore. So Hiccup sort of embraces what his father wanted, which was to take over the village, which he did not want to do. But now he's sort of forced into that role with the friends and his mother, the few people he's got left to sort of go back and save his village from being destroyed by this new guy with the alpha dragon and him riding Toothless. He has a Night Fury now. And so as they take the babies, which is just an intuitive, creative thinking sort of thing for Hiccup to do, they go back to the village, and he's just going to just ultimately face certain death. He doesn't really have a plan to... he doesn't have this exact plan. He's just trying to save the village, whatever it takes. And ultimately, as he's trying to reach Toothless, Toothless does come out from under the spell, and he sort of challenges the alpha and ends up beating him, and all the dragons follow him. So at the end of all this, after Toothless was beaten, forced to kill Stoic, he's slave to the alpha, he's now finally, he's the alpha. and he's commanding the dragons. So even the dragon gets character development in this movie, which I thought was pretty amazing. And so that's sort of how it ends off, is he's the established alpha. Hiccup is now the established leader of Berk. And so I just love the storytelling and the way the script was paced and written in this movie. I thought it was phenomenal. And so from there, we move on to the third one, How to Train a Dragon, The Hidden World. I did not know what I was getting into going into this one. I have heard right before I watched it that I remember some people saying it was kind of emotional. So I was kind of really scared to get into it. And yep, it was. We get this new villain who is in the business of killing dragons, which is, he's kind of the first one to do it in this franchise, who's just a flat out murderer for these guys. And so, beginning of the story, Toothless sees another Night Fury, as they call Light Fury. And so he's just distracted for the first 2/3 of the movie. And it sort of is a new dynamic because the villain's the one that planted the new Night Fury to distract Hiccup's Night Fury. And so it's all part of this diabolical plan to get rid of all the dragons, because the opening action scene of them, Hiccup and his friends and their dragons, saving more dragons from this boat, it's in this movie, it's now known that Berk is being overfilled with dragons, but they're saving all these dragons. So some people think he's building an army, some people think he's just crazy. So it's becoming overwhelming for Hiccup, running the village, running or saving the dragons, having a relationship with Astrid, who they're being pressured to just get married. And even though he has great chemistry with her, neither one of them really seem to be ready for that. And so he just has so much going on. It's almost overwhelming. And as ultimately, when this villain attacks, Hiccup decides they need to find new Berk temporarily, because his father, and we get flashbacks of Stoic, was talking about the hidden world as the birthplace for dragons and a hidden place where dragons will go to that no man can find. So Hiccup believes that will be the new home. And so that becomes the general plot for, I'd say, most of the middle, is the entirety of the village of Berk goes out in search of this hidden world. And so they find this place, they start setting up shop on this island, and part of the side story is Hiccup is training Toothless, getting him the other piece to his tail, and letting him go off and be with the Night Fury because she doesn't like Hiccup. And so as Toothless goes off with her, his absence is noticed because there's an instance where they try to go after the villain, but they don't succeed because it would have been easier if Toothless were there. And so as Astrid sort of encourages Hiccup after their defeat with this villain, they end up going after Toothless, and they find him, and he's an established alpha, not only of the village, but of the entire hidden world for all of the dragons. And we get the cameo, the alpha dragon from the second movie, is there in the third for a second, for basically bowing to Toothless. And so that was a neat little cameo as well. So Hiccup messes up, the dragons start to go after him, but Toothless goes with him to get him out of there. And as they go back to this island that they've been set on, Toothless at first is upset because he abandoned his Night Fury, but she's there. And so it turns out she finally followed him back to the village. But then the villain shows up. They capture the new Night Fury, as they call Light Fury, and forcing Toothless to basically tell the army no. Army being the rest of the dragons. So as they capture all the dragons, Hiccup really has no choice but to have a last-ditch effort plan with his friends, where they have the wingsuits. They go back down to where all these ships are with all the caged dragons, and while all of his friends are on a mission to sort of fight and free the dragons, Hiccup, of course, is trying to just get Toothless free. And we actually get this really intense fight where the villain starts riding Light Fury away. So Hiccup gets on Toothless, and they're chasing after Light Fury, and Toothless ends up going down. He's probably going to die, but Hiccup is now holding on to Light Fury, whereas the villain's hanging on his leg, sort of just down there, and he undoes the saddle, I guess, that has the injection into Light Fury, and says, "Go save Toothless." So Hiccup is now essentially sacrificing himself, as he and this villain are now falling to certain death. And the Light Fury does save Toothless, as Hiccup gets to see. And he's just accepting his fate. So he's now the true leader that we always knew he could be. In the beginning of the first one, he was just this quirky kid that has no leadership abilities, to now in the third, he's a pretty damn good one. And so the Light Fury, as we see, comes back last second to get Hiccup. So she's finally come around. And as the bad guys, trying to talk to Hiccup, he kicks the metal part of his foot off, and down goes the villain. So I thought that was ironic. And the emotional part now is after everyone's reunited. Excuse me. After everyone's reunited, he decides the dragons need to go. It's better for them to go to the hidden world. They'll be safe there. Mankind across the lands are trying to go after dragons, and kill or cage dragons. And so the entire village, including Hiccup, has to say goodbye to their dragons. And it was a tearful moment. It was a really powerful part of the movie. But we get a very nice ending that I did not expect. We finally see Hiccup does marry Astrid. They set up camp on that island, and we get, in the future, he and Astrid take their kids to the edge of the hidden world. Toothless, the Light Fury, and Toothless's babies are now there. And so the movie ends with Toothless reconnecting with Hiccup after all these years, and he's taking his children, he's giving them turns with him riding Toothless. And so it was a very full circle, emotional, very nice ending for this trilogy, which I think makes it one of the most solid trilogies. You have these characters that were just kids, that were irresponsible, that had no leadership abilities in the first one, who now in the third are leading and are just the most mature, responsible characters you can think of. So, all in all, I extremely loved this trilogy. I think each movie's great. They all have their own strengths. It's hard to pick a favorite. My favorite might be the first, just because I saw it so long ago and have rewatched it so many times. But the second and third were phenomenal movies. So that is those are my thoughts for this trilogy. We got all 3 in 4K. Of course, you have Blu-ray and DVD options as well for this trilogy. If you want to check these movies out, these are a good way to watch them. They're not really too expensive right now either. So thank you guys for watching. As always, keep it digging, and I'll see you all next time.